Ladies, gentlemen, non-binaries, and everyone in between, hello and welcome to Ducky Productions. My name is Nathan.
My name is Avery.
And today we are going to be talking about games that I don't like and why I don't like them.
And why I do. So we're going to be discussing more broadly some genres that Nathan's not particularly fond of. But we will discuss specific games as well to give you guys an idea of some of the games that I am particularly partial to. The very first game / genre that we're going to be discussing is one of my absolute favorites. And baby. She's sad. She was crying.
Let's see if there's a spike in our analytics.
Andy, don't show your butt to the camera.
Don't expose yourself.
Keep your tail down. Oh, did you see that hair?
Where? Hey. You can't explore in here. You'll destroy absolutely everything.
That's 100% facts. She's not gonna last in here.
No, she's
Oh, but she's so sweet. Look at that sweet baby.
I love you.
She loves you too.
Very much so.
She lesbians you. God, that movie sucks.
We don't.
That should be a video of its own.
We're gonna talk all about Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, and why I hate it
awful.
so much. We should rewatch it just so I can take notes and rip it apart.
I don't know if it's worth making a video for that.
I think it is. Because I want the whole world to know how much I hate that movie. Because there is not, whenever somebody's like, oh, what's your least favorite movie? I'm like, I don't have one. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's Scott frickin' Pilgrim. Plus, we're a gaming channel, and it's like a gaming thing. So, yeah, you're going to have to put her out there.
That's true.
Goodbye, Schmenders. So the very first game / genre that we're going to be discussing that Nathan is not particularly partial to, and I am, is Animal Crossing, i.e. life simulation games. To start it off positively, the reason that I absolutely love these games, Animal Crossing in particular, big shot of my shrine to Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing I find very relaxing. I find the game's perfect because it's the type of game where you can play it for 10 minutes a day or you can play it for 4 hours in a day if you're me. Animal Crossing, the music is wonderful. You feel like you're making real connections with these little villagers. It's a game that makes you feel connected to a community when maybe, especially in current climates of the world, you feel a little isolated and disconnected. I love life sims because they're relaxing, they're approachable, they are escapism, the epitome of escapism. So, why don't you like them?
That is an excellent question. I would have to say that some of the reasons why I'm not particularly invested in life sim games is I guess I just have a lot of trouble getting invested. Obviously, they're not on the scale or epicness of a lot of the games that I play, such as, Elder Scrolls titles dealing with the world ending, Wolfenstein dealing with the world ending, Uncharted dealing with the world ending.
You like games where there's an apocalypse.
Fallout.
Yeah. Ooh. Once Upon a Time, your favorite series.
Not anymore,
Yeah.
due to recent events. Yeah. But, so there's the scale factor. There is to complement them, I almost think it's too much freedom for me. I think that
kind of lacks goals for you.
Yeah, it lacks goals. I mean, there is no end goal in Animal Crossing. People say that about Elder Scrolls games, but truly, when it comes to a game like Animal Crossing. There absolutely is no end goal. You get to know your villagers better, you build up your town, make it look nice, you build up your museum, you do activities like that, but
You do listen.
it is not a collect-a-thon.
No.
That is not the goal of the game. The game is... Apparently I don't listen that well. What is the game? It's socializing. I don't know. It's getting to know your villagers and becoming part of this community. And I mean, you literally just said why you loved it like 30 seconds ago, and I don't remember.
The point of life sims is almost that there is no point. Like, and that's why I like them.
Right.
I like life sims because there is no grand scale big problem. There's no problems. It's the same reason why people like slice of life anime. You just get to chill. There is no end goal. You could never pay off your house in Animal Crossing. You could never fill up your museum. When I first started playing that game, I never did. I never paid anything off. I was 10. I didn't understand what I was doing. And I can see why that's not appealing to some people, because some people find that...
I have no chill at all.
Yeah, none. You'd be trying to min-max your relationships with the villagers and trying to figure out the algorithms behind this thing.
You should have seen me play Sims. I literally couldn't stop. I would try to optimize my skills for all of my characters, and I'd be like, this person can't start his music career until he has level 10 in the guitar.
I think ultimately why this genre isn't appealing to you is because your playstyle does not fit it.
Yeah,
at all.
I would say that's probably accurate. It's I have no idea what I'd do in this game. Like, I think I'd be totally lost. And
I feel aimless.
Yeah, I think that really, I mean, could even tell you something about toxic gamer culture, where they're all about, you know, how hard games are, and if you don't play hard games then you're not playing real games. This game would be more difficult for me to play than Dark Souls. This would be a harder game for me to get through, because I just would have no idea what to do. I'd be totally lost.
Well, and I think that life sims are kind of interesting because there are like two different types of escapism, right? So you've got the type of escapism where you get to be the big hero and you end up the strongest at the end of the game, which, don't get me wrong, I like a lot of games like that.
And that's not even really what I'm most interested in, but that's a good metaphor generally for Western RPGs.
Right. And then you've got games like Animal Crossing where you're just supposed to exist. And I think maybe for someone like you are a very, whether in real life or in video games, a very goal-oriented person, a very time-oriented person. So wasting your time chilling on the beach in Animal Crossing, just catching some fish because you're like, whatever, I don't have anything better to do, would probably drive you insane.
Yeah, everybody else is like, man, I really, really needed Animal Crossing because with everything going on right now, I just need a space where I can relax and be a part of community. And I'm like, man, everything's stressing me out right now. I just gotta kill some demons invading Mars from hell.
Yeah, I ultimately also think that a huge part of why you aren't particularly fond of these types of games is because the type of characters in them generally aren't super appealing to you because they're all kind of a little weird. Like, I had Zucker in my town. Zucker's a lazy villager, and that means he talks about bugs a lot. And Nathan saw a scene where Zucker was talking about how the bugs in the floor told him to make this recipe, and I think that's where you were just out. It was not your vibe anymore.
I don't know. That might have been the one thing that drew me in. To be completely honest, she has made me more interested in Animal Crossing than I was before I met her, mostly because I'd never heard of it, but also because I learned that in the GameCube one, in the original one, everybody is so much meaner to you.
So vicious.
And I feel like I'd be more into that. Like, I would want some drama. I would need some kind of drama because I have no chill. I would not be able to play a game that is just relaxed and that is just there for escapism, because I don't know how to relax. It's just not something that I do.
No, you don't.
But yeah, so if I could just have these incredibly cruel, ruthless villagers and you're wondering whether or not they hate you day in and day out,
You'd be down.
yeah, sounds like my kind of game.
Oh my god.
They should bring back Mr. Rossetti.
Oh, Mr. Rossetti!
I don't know if I've ever seen him in game, in any game, but everything
No.
I've heard about him,
He's wonderful.
he needs to be in the game.
I miss him. Nintendo! All right. On to our next genre/game that you're not super into. A lot of y'all are going to be real mad. JRPGs. Persona 5. One of my favorite games of all time. Favorite series of all time. Like, hey, we got Persona 3 in the background right there. It's pretty nice. I love the Persona games. Played Golden on the Vita and just fell in love. What I love about Persona is that it's kind of a life sim mixed with JRPG. The turn-based combat is super fun. The music is incredible. It's super funky. Like, it's just got a lot of, like, horns and weird stuff in it, and I'm super down. The art style, the visual style of the menus, of everything, the characters, it feels like all kind of comic booky, because the characters have, like, a little bit thicker outlines on them. It feels very noir, because they're phantom thieves. Everything about this game. I love the silly writing. I love the characters. I love the voice acting, the music, the art. Like, I have no complaints with Persona whatsoever. Absolutely love the turn-based combat. Love all of the gear that you get. I love, if y'all want to know who best waifu is, it's On. Fight me if you disagree. Why don't you like JRPGs?
So, a lot of the JRPGs, I was going to say that I've played. Ha!
Yeah.
So, I've beaten Final Fantasy X, and I did that recently. And I've also played a little bit of 10 too.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, okay, I'm going to just completely get sidetracked. Persona 5, amazing art style, amazing music. I am blown away. The game looks and sounds utterly fantastic. I've watched a lot of Persona 5.
Because of me!
Yeah, but I'm still not interested in playing it, as beautiful as it is. And that's because, one, purely turn-based combat doesn't interest me very much. I think that there can be an incredible depth in turn-based combat, and I am not saying that I am an expert in any sense of the word, but what I prefer when it comes to turn-based combat is when there are either real-time elements or when it's almost a take on turn-based combat, say like the original isometric Fallout games, where you can move around a grid and you have a certain number of points that you can do certain actions during your turn. Once you use all those, it's over. So you can have more or less points. Certain enemies have more or less points. That sort of thing allows for a lot of variation and strategy. I just finished playing Child of Light on the PlayStation Vita, of all things.
The console nobody owned except us.
And there are a ton of real-time elements to the turn-based combat in that game, and I absolutely love it. When it comes to purely turn-based combat, like Final Fantasy X, I struggle with it because I feel like, at least with how I play, there's an optimal way to play the game, especially when turns are set up the way they do. Like, I don't see the point in blocking ever, because if you block, then you're just going to mitigate some of the damage until your next turn, and then on your next turn, you're going to do whatever you were going to do that, you could have done while you were blocking. So you essentially just took more damage. And yeah, sure, somebody could give you a potion or whatever. I don't know. There's not enough flexibility there, and it can really ruins me. I know this has been a giant rambly mess. Let me put it this way. I got to the end of Final Fantasy X and was fighting the final boss, and I spent 2 hours on this. And you have to go through like 5 different incredibly hard areas from the last save to get to the final boss, who of course has like 3 final forms or whatever. And I spent 2 hours and finally got just crushed by this thing. And I nearly quit the game on the final boss. And then I went back and I spent 6 hours grinding because I wasn't going to take a chance on this. Went into the final boss again and beat him in 3 hits.
Yeah.
3 turns. 3 turns.
So,
and that to me just feels, it's like that is JRPGs to me. That is all of JRPGs. It's like, yep, grind for 75% of the game or you're going to have the worst time of your life.
it's fun. I like to grind. I love the grind in JRPGs.
I like grinding to a point.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like, some people have made the argument that turn-based combat is outdated. Like, some people feels like it's just an outdated way to do combat. I don't agree. I love turn-based combat because I like the fact that you get time to think out your moves. It feels more engaging to me because when you're just swinging your sword and kind of hoping that you win, I don't know. I'm not against real-time combat, but I find turn-based combat a little bit more interesting because you can be a little bit more invested in your moves. But I do understand that turn-based combat can feel a little archaic to some people too.
And like I said, loved Child of Light, loved the original Fallout games from like 1997. It's really not turn-based combat. It's
all together.
Yeah, it's the incredibly rigid. You have 6 people, 3 of them can stand in 3 spots, 3 other people can stand in 3 other spots, and it just goes down the turn counter. What I really like about, like, take Fallout and Child of Light. I know there's a haste spell that you can use in Final Fantasy and most turn-based combat games, but I like that, different characters have basically different speeds in the turn-based combat of things like Child of Light and Fallout.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like that you can do things to affect the speed at which you move in certain ways. I don't know. I like that in Fallout. Like, you can cheese the game by standing behind a wall and then during your turn popping out, shooting somebody, and then popping back behind the wall. So,
but what else don't you like about JRPGs? Because it's not just the combat.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Well, they're a little too into boobies for me.
Not for me. But I am a feminist. But I'm also gay. So
it's just so much.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to phrase this carefully. The kind of hypersexualization of women in JRPGs. If you didn't, Nathan's not an anime dude, just so y'all know. I am an anime dude. I love anime, but Nathan was not a weeaboo growing up. And I think I've kind of become desensitized to that stuff. Like, I don't even look at it anymore. I was playing what was it? Fire Emblem, where you can, like, there's some weird stuff that happens in the 3DS Fire Emblem games when you're, like, talking to people, and Nathan was like, that's really weird. And I was like,
what happens, Avery?
You can pet them.
You can pet people.
Yeah, and I'm just so desensitized to that because I've played many a JRPG.
No, I get it. It's a cultural thing, not the
hypersexualization
that
and stuff.
That I'm not saying, yeah, that's totally 100% okay because different cultures.
Yeah.
But the weird Japanese stuff, I completely understand as a cultural thing. Like, take Final Fantasy X. You can tell I have an incredible amount of experience in this genre. But, that game starts out and it's in like this future sci-fi city where they play water soccer, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then this giant fish comes out of like a lightning tornado in the sky and starts like destroying the entirety of the city, and everybody's like, oh my god, run from that thing. I'm not at all confused about exactly what's going on here. And I was like,
I am.
Nobody's screaming what the ever living is even happening.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Why are these random characters showing up who know the main character, who we have no idea who they are, and everybody knows exactly what's going on? Why are things floating up into the sky? Why does nobody ever ask any questions? And then I go off and read a comic book where Dr. Octopus switches brains with Peter Parker for 2 years and, like, gets a college degree and a girlfriend. And then Peter Parker, who, like, a portion of his mind was laying latent in the brain of Otto Octavius, like, comes to the forefront and mind battles it out with the person who took over his brain. And then all of a sudden he's Spider-Man again. But Dr. Octopus's mind was actually backed up into another robot who, like, got reprogrammed because he used to be a supervillain, and then he came back in a clone body of Peter Parker, and I'm like, yeah, comic books.
It's all about what you're comfortable with. It's all about what you've grown up with. You didn't grow up a weeb, so it seems a little weird to you.
So what I'm trying to say here is I'm very much put off by the weird Japanese nonsense, and it's 100% hypocritical.
Yeah.
Because there's just as weird stuff that I'm 100% okay with.
Absolutely. But I get it too. So, the boobies though, that's very fair. That's very fair.
It makes me incredibly uncomfortable. It just...
Lolly girls also make you very uncomfortable.
Lolly girls?
And they make me uncomfortable. The young, like, I'm a 1,000-year-old dragon, but I look like I'm 12, so it's okay for you to be sexually attracted to me.
Yeah.
It's not. Just so you know, that's weird. If you're into Tiki from Fire Emblem, I have questions.
Yeah, it's just very, very... all of it. The whole thing makes me incredibly uncomfortable. I don't see why, like... And yes, we have it in American culture.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, entirely.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, I don't think we invented boob physics. I don't think that was us.
No.
No. And we don't use it as liberally either.
But you know what? Sometimes it's really funny.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really funny.
It is. It is when you play a JRPG and apparently women breathing just make those things go totally haywire.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I should be more angry about it than I am. I think it's really funny. Desensitized.
Yeah, apparently.
All right. Second to last game / genre that I love that Nathan is not super into is visual novel style games. Now, this is not my favorite visual novel style game, but I don't know where Danganronpa is. So, this is Phoenix Wright. If you guys can't read, this is the Japanese import of Phoenix Wright trilogy. But I absolutely love games like this, whether it's Phoenix Wright, Danganronpa. I've got a couple weird visual novels on my Switch that I downloaded off of the eShop. I love visual novel, like, detective style games too. Like, both Danganronpa and Phoenix Wright kind of have like a detective aspect to them. But I love reading a story on my TV, I guess. I like the voice acting. I like that it feels like you're part of a story. It feels like a choose your own adventure style book, just like in a video game. I like that they're very character focused. And just especially the crime solving aspect of it for some reason is just very much piece de resistance to me. I wanted to be a lawyer when I was a kid, and then I realized I'm not smart enough for law school.
That's news to me.
Yeah, wanted to be a lawyer. But visual novel games, I like them a lot because you just read, you just find clues, you just try stuff. And I feel like you get to know the characters on a much deeper level, personally. So, I love visual novel games. I wish there were more of them, personally. Why don't you like them?
So, I think a really good through line for why I don't like all of the games that we've listed so far, I'm not interested in playing them, is that I unfortunately have been brainwashed into being way too invested in the Western ideal of realism.
Yeah.
Like, way too invested. And so, take. If JRPGs had utterly phenomenal storytelling, I would play a lot more of them. It's not that they have worse storytelling than any given Western games. It's just that Western games align more closely with my personal ideals. But I'll play incredibly unrealistic indie games because they have a story that is incredibly heartwarming. Like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. Not like any game I would ever play, but it's got an utterly phenomenal story.
Then you need to play Persona 5 because the story is utterly phenomenal.
Except for the boobies.
What about the boobies?
I don't know.
They
There's
just
that.
be there. They're just bee boobies.
Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, I don't know how it ends.
I'm not going to spoil it for you.
I'm not playing a 120-hour game.
Yeah, I think that's the other reason you don't like JRPGs. Oh, we completely forgot. You don't like JRPGs because the story by itself half the time is like 100 hours.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if it's an open world exploration game that has the realism, then yeah, sure, I can totally go for like the 80 to 100 hours. But when it's just a straight story with nothing but cutscenes and turn-based combat and going to your job at the movie theater where you make 3,000 yen an hour.
Excuse you, I don't work at the movie theater. I picked the beef bowl shop because it raises your proficiency. No, just proficiency.
Just in general.
Yeah. Your proficiency skill. So.
Okay.
And it pays you the most money.
Yeah, that's way too much time. I 100%ed Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt and all the add-ons, and it took me a month of every single spare second that I have. And that is when I did not have a wife. So
yeah,
I cannot imagine
doing it now.
Exactly. So
but back to visual novels.
Of course, visual novels. So anyway, yes, that realism. And so the further we get away from the Elder Scrolls style first person, do whatever you want, you can jump up on a table and all the dishes go flying everywhere. The further we get from that, the less interested I am in the game. And I don't think there's anything quite as far away from that as a visual novel.
Yeah. Especially because most visual novel games do come out of Japan. And not to say that Nathan hates everything Japanese, because his favorite gaming company, platform, is Sony. And some of your favorite games are first-party Sony games. But
made by American and European studios, but...
Yeah. Anyway, what was I saying?
Not that I hate everything Japanese. You were trying to defend my honor.
I know,
but then prior to that, visual novel stuff.
Oh, most visual novels
are Japanese.
Yes, most visual novels are Japanese and therefore have the Japanese style of storytelling, which as a Westerner who likes that realism aspect, you're then super not into it, because not only is it not realistic because you're not experiencing the story in the engaging way that you feel like you should be, but it's also kind of normally pretty wacky stuff that's going down.
I don't even know if I'd play an Elder Scrolls visual novel, to be completely honest.
I'd probably play it.
I mean, to be 100% honest, I'm not even sure that I know what visual novel style gameplay is entirely like. I'm sure there's some stuff that would throw me off that I'm not expecting. But I've seen you play a little bit of Danganronpa, and it's just, it's just watching people talk until you get to press a couple of buttons.
Yeah.
And by a couple of buttons, I mean you get to decide on one of a couple of buttons to press.
Yeah. It's a good time, I promise.
Oh, God. the story would have to carry the whole thing, which I feel like is what, I mean,
The point is.
that's what the point of a visual novel is.
But I don't feel like there's stories that would generally appeal to you.
No, I would entirely agree with that. And I think
the Western idea of a visual novel is the walking simulator type games. Like Edith Finch, What Remains of Edith Finch, and games like that. Now, whether or not they're actually Western games, I don't know. But those, I feel like, are kind of ish the same idea as a visual novel in that it's more a story vehicle than it is about the actual, like, there's no combat or anything like that.
that's a really interesting point to make, because on a recent video with Jack Packard and Yahtzee Croshaw, they were talking about whether walking simulators are games, and they said, yeah, it seems like walking simulators are kind of the advancement of the point and click adventure.
Yep.
Which is literally what visual novels are significantly more closely related to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd almost be interested to play like the best visual novel ever to see if they utilized the gameplay in an interesting way.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what I'm afraid of, is it'll be a 40-hour game where it's like press X to go left or circle to go right.
Yeah.
And that'll be the whole thing is just that kind of stuff. But if they actually utilized the medium of the visual novel to evoke interesting types of gameplay within that limited space, that could be really, really interesting.
That's not how it works, though. That's not
they
not
don't
how,
do that?
No, you're reading and picking dialogue options, and that's about it.
Never gonna touch that. That
sounds like your worst nightmare.
Yep. I also don't really like reading in games much. So JRPGs, life sims, visual novels.
Reading, actually. Maybe you just don't like reading. Maybe it's because you're a slow reader.
I'm a slow reader, and I never have subtitles on when I play any game ever, because I find myself, I can't pay attention to what they're saying. I actually stop hearing what the voice actor is saying and just reading the subtitles. Even when I try not to read the subtitles, I read the subtitles. So
yeah,
I don't know what that like compulsion is, but I have to turn them off. Otherwise, I will never experience like the actual acting and how good the acting might be.
True.
Or how bad the acting might be.
That's a lot of games.
Even better.
Yes. Now the final genre, kind of, that we are going to be discussing is by far the most controversial. And these have all been very controversial.
I'd say that the Morrowind thing would tank my YouTube career, but I might be ending it right now.
Yeah, before it started. The genre that Nathan is not partial to, that I absolutely adore, is Nintendo.
Just the whole thing.
In its entirety. First, we'll start with why I like Nintendo. I mean, one, I grew up on Nintendo, and I think most people with the platform that they prefer is generally related to the one that they grew up with, let's be honest. But I like Nintendo because they have a huge focus on handhelds. Their handhelds have always been top in the market. I just love Nintendo IPs in general. Pokemon, Zelda, Mario, I mean, we all know. Nintendo in general, I like the way that their consoles look. I like that they're generally pretty simple, user-friendly. It's kind of the same reason why I like Apple. They look nice. And the games, Nintendo has a lot of JRPGs. There's a lot of visual novels, and there's a lot of life sim games that are generally a huge part of the Nintendo library. So it's just the best vehicle for the games that I like. I also think that Nintendo is probably they conduct themselves in a way that I like the best out of the big three. I like the choices that they make better than Xbox and Sony tend to make sometimes. Uh, yeah, that's it. I just really like Nintendo. They made Animal Crossing.
I will say on a positive, never having completed a Nintendo game. I've played a decent few. Nintendo are consistently the best game makers in the world. And what they do especially well and what they understand the best is telling stories through the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is what makes video games unique as a medium. Like, using cutscenes as a vehicle for your entire story does not a video game make. The story has to be evoked through the gameplay because the gameplay is what makes the medium unique. This is not going to become a discussion about ludonarrative dissonance, but that is what I'm talking about right now. So in that way, Legend of Zelda games, particularly Ocarina and Breath of the Wild, are genuinely some of the best storytelling in video games that have ever existed, especially in the AAA space.
Mm-hmm.
So I can outright admit that. Unfortunately, I'm a noob and a pleb, and I like my cutscenes, and I especially like my character interactions and my dialogue choices. I'm a giant Obsidian nerd, so when it comes to, like, take New Vegas, where every single time you have a conversation, every time you get to speak, you have like 7 different dialogue options portraying every single possible thought that you could have had on the topic, and so you really get to genuinely express yourself. I'm super into that. And that is gameplay, but most gaming companies really haven't figured out how to actually make dialogue a cohesive part of the game itself. And Nintendo is incredibly admirable for the most part, not even playing around with that. They're just not even playing that game. They're playing another game. I'm not going to make this an extended metaphor, but they do a phenomenal job of that, and it unfortunately does not fit my interests.
I think it's also because you're a giant edgelord. I think it's because Nintendo games are generally one broad appeal. So they're going to be generally games that can be enjoyed by anyone of any age. So they normally don't carry super, super heavy stories.
But Ocarina has some incredibly dark and heavy subtext.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying that that's in its entirety true, but I do think that you are an edgelord, and you definitely tend to prefer something in the vein of a Wolfenstein versus the vein of a Mario Odyssey.
Not a disingenuous edgelord, though.
True.
I like the truly edgy stuff, not just like brutal for brutal's sake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
although Doom is really good.
I think too, a huge part of Nintendo, what's turned you off to it, is the fans of Nintendo.
That's actually very true. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. Because when I had met him, I don't think you originally knew quite how into Nintendo I was. It's my main thing. Like, that's the main thing I play. And you were like, man, Nintendo fans are all just like kind of uppity, and they all think Nintendo's the best company and they're the only ones that make a game that's ever worthwhile. And I'm like, yeah, it's true, but like, I like Sony too. But I do think that the fan base, like a lot of other fan bases, can really turn people away.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's like Nintendo is utterly phenomenal. It's just that the stereotype,
mm-hmm.
I won't even say all or most or anywhere close to that. The stereotype of a Nintendo fan is that, you know, they, I guess they are stereotyped as people who imagine themselves as these people who play the greatest video games of all time, and they play only the best, and they know everything about all of the best games ever to exist, and they've never played Half-Life, and never played God of War, and never played Skyrim, and never played Spider-Man, and never played The Last of Us, and never played, you know, they have zero experience outside of the Nintendo arena. Again, this is the stereotype. And so whenever those infrequent occurrences happen where the stereotype is proven correct by one bad actor on the internet, then that just turns you off to the whole
thing,
the whole deal,
the whole shebang.
Yeah, and I could picture that. I mean, there are people who don't like Star Wars because of the fans, which is possibly 100% more fair. Because they're actually awful.
Here's the thing. The real reason why I refuse to watch Star Wars is so I can always be that person that says, I haven't seen Star Wars, and make people go, what? That's it. That's why.
By the way, she hasn't seen Star Wars.
What? I saw the 7th one. What's that one called?
It's called A New Hope 2.
Isn't that the Phantom? Isn't it more like 4? Which one's 4?
It's number 7 is Star Wars Episode 4-2, A Newer Hope.
A Newer Hope. Yeah. So, would you say that you would ever be willing to try and get into Nintendo?
100%. If I was ever going to play a Nintendo game, Breath of the Wild would almost certainly be it.
Yeah, Breath of the Wild.
That's absolutely the one that I have come the closest to playing, and probably is the closest to my personal interests.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could ever do a Mario game. Like, I don't know, man.
You've played all of the Jak and Daxters, but you won't play Mario.
Yeah, but Jak and Daxter's really edgelord.
Oh. See, it comes full circle.
Yeah. Is there dialogue in Mario games? Like there's the little speech bubbles where you gotta read.
Talk. Sometimes they talk.
I don't know, man.
You're lame.
Yes, I am.
Alrighty, so we have covered all of the genres / games / companies that Nathan is not particularly partial to, but why I like them. In a following video, we are actually going to cover the genres / games that I don't really like that Nathan loves. If you guys have any suggestions for videos, or if you want to rip us a new one for our controversial opinions, please leave a comment down below. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and our social medias will be linked in the doobly-doo. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Goodbye!